At 5:30 a.m., Michael Thompson made the same promise to his 4-year-old son. Daddy will always come back to you. But when he found an abandoned baby crying in the hospital parking lot, keeping that promise would cost him everything, and change 3 lives forever. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. The alarm clock buzzed at 5:30 a.m., just like it had every morning for the past 3 years. Michael Thompson rolled out of bed, his body aching from another long shift at the factory. At 32, he looked older than his years, the stress of single parenthood and financial struggles etched into every line on his face. "Daddy?" came a small voice from the next room. "Coming, buddy," Michael called softly, pulling on his worn jeans and faded t-shirt. He walked into the tiny second bedroom of their 1-bedroom apartment, where his 4-year-old son Jake was sitting up in his race car bed, rubbing his eyes with small fists. "Did I wake you up, little man?" Michael asked, sitting on the edge of the bed. Jake shook his head, his blonde hair sticking up in every direction. "I heard the scary alarm again." Michael's heart clenched. Even at 4 years old, Jake was too aware of their struggles. The boy had learned to be quiet when Daddy was tired, to eat whatever was put in front of him without complaining, and to never ask for toys when they passed the store displays. "That's just Daddy's work alarm," Michael explained, smoothing down Jake's hair. "It helps me know when it's time to get ready." "Are you going to work again today?" "Yes, buddy. But Mrs. Henderson will take good care of you, okay?" Mrs. Henderson was their elderly neighbor who watched Jake during the day for whatever Michael could afford to pay her. She was kind and patient, but Michael knew Jake would rather spend the day with his father. Michael had been raising Jake alone since the boy's mother, Lisa, had left them when Jake was barely a year old. She couldn't handle the responsibility, she said. She was too young, she said. She needed to find herself, she said. All Michael knew was that one day he came home from work to find a note on the kitchen table and Jake crying in his crib. Lisa was gone and she never came back. After getting Jake dressed and fed, Michael walked him next door to Mrs. Henderson's apartment. The hallway smelled of coffee and old carpet, familiar scents that had become part of their daily routine. "Be good for Mrs. Henderson, okay?" Michael said, kneeling down to Jake's eye level. "I will, Daddy." Jake hugged him tightly around the neck. "Will you come back?" The question broke Michael's heart every single day. Jake had been so young when his mother left, but something deep inside him still worried that people he loved might disappear. "I will always come back to you, Jake," Michael promised, holding his son close. "Always. No matter what happens, Daddy will never leave you." "Promise?" "I promise, buddy. Cross my heart." Michael made an X over his chest and Jake giggled, doing the same thing. "Cross my heart too," Jake said seriously. As Michael walked to the bus stop, he thought about that promise. It was the same promise he made every morning, and he meant it with every fiber of his being. Jake was everything to him, his reason for getting up, his motivation to keep working, his hope for the future. The bus ride to Sacred Heart Hospital took 45 minutes through the busy city streets. Michael worked in the hospital's maintenance department, fixing everything from broken air conditioning units to leaky faucets. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid the bills and provided the health insurance that Jake needed. 3 months later, Michael's supervisor approached him with an opportunity that would change everything. "Thompson," Bill Carson called out as Michael was finishing his shift. "Got a minute?" Michael wiped his hands on his work shirt and walked over to where Bill was standing with a clipboard. "What's up, boss?" "I need someone reliable for night shift security," Bill explained. "Old Murphy is retiring next month and I need someone to walk the grounds, monitor the parking lots, keep an eye on things. Pays better than maintenance, about 30% more." Michael's eyes widened. 30% more would mean he could finally afford a decent 2-bedroom apartment for him and Jake. Maybe even save a little money for emergencies. "I'm interested," Michael said quickly. "What would I need to do?" "Mostly just patrol the hospital grounds from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Make sure the parking lots are secure, check that all the doors are locked, respond to any issues that come up. You'd have a radio to call for backup if anything serious happens." Michael thought about it. The night shift would mean sleeping during the day while Jake was with Mrs. Henderson, then being awake for dinner and bedtime. It might actually work better than his current schedule. "When would I start?" "Next Monday if you want it. Murphy will train you for 2 weeks, then you're on your own." Michael extended his hand. "You've got a deal, boss." That night, as he tucked Jake into bed, Michael explained the changes that were coming. "Daddy's going to have a new job," he said, sitting on the edge of the race car bed. "I'll work at night while you're sleeping, and sleep during the day while you're with Mrs. Henderson. Will you still come back to me?" Jake asked, his big blue eyes serious. Every single morning, buddy. Cross my heart. Cross my heart too, Daddy. Michael took to his new job immediately. There was something peaceful about walking the hospital grounds at night, knowing that inside the building doctors and nurses were saving lives while he kept watch outside. Sacred Heart Hospital was one of the largest medical centers in the city, with multiple buildings, several parking lots, and an emergency entrance that stayed busy around the clock. Michael's route took him past the main entrance, through the staff parking area, around the emergency department, and along the perimeter fence. Most nights were quiet. Occasionally he'd help a lost family find their way to the right building, or direct an ambulance to the emergency bay. Sometimes he'd encounter homeless people trying to sleep in the parking garage, and he'd gently guide them to the nearby shelter instead of calling the police. Everyone deserves dignity, he told his supervisor when Bill asked about his soft approach to trespassing. These people aren't hurting anyone. They're just looking for a safe place to rest. Michael understood what it felt like to be desperate. He'd been there himself, especially in those first months after Lisa left, when he struggled to figure out how to balance work and caring for an infant. 3 weeks into his new position, Michael was making his 2 a.m. rounds when he heard something unusual, the sound of a baby crying. The crying was coming from near the main entrance of the hospital, but it wasn't inside the building. Michael quickened his pace, his flashlight cutting through the darkness as he searched for the source of the sound. Near the large stone sign that read Sacred Heart Hospital, partially hidden behind some landscaping, he found a small bundle wrapped in what looked like a hospital blanket. Michael's heart stopped. It was a baby, a tiny newborn, red-faced and crying, alone in the cold night air. "Oh my God," he whispered, immediately scooping up the infant. The baby couldn't be more than a few days old, still wearing a hospital bracelet around its tiny wrist. Michael cradled the baby against his chest, feeling the small body trembling. He radioed immediately for backup. "This is Thompson on grounds patrol. I need medical assistance at the main entrance immediately. I found an abandoned newborn." "Copy that, Thompson. Medical team is on the way." While he waited, Michael gently rocked the baby, trying to provide warmth and comfort. The infant's cries began to quiet as it felt the security of being held. "It's okay, little one," Michael whispered. "You're safe now. I've got you." Looking at the tiny face, Michael was transported back 4 years to when Jake was this small and helpless. He remembered the overwhelming feeling of responsibility, the fierce protective instinct that had kicked in the moment he held his son for the first time. Within minutes, Dr. Sarah Chin, the head of the pediatric unit, arrived with a team of nurses. "What do we have?" she asked, immediately taking the baby from Michael's arms to examine it. "Found the baby about 5 minutes ago, wrapped in this blanket behind the sign," Michael reported. "Still wearing a hospital bracelet." Dr. Chin checked the bracelet. "This is from our maternity ward. Baby girl Rodriguez, born 3 days ago." She looked up at Michael with concern. "The mother and baby were discharged yesterday afternoon. Someone just left her here?" Michael asked, his voice thick with disbelief and anger. "It happens more than you'd think," Dr. Chin said sadly. "Young mothers, scared, overwhelmed, with no support system. At least she left the baby at a hospital where she knew the child would be found." As they wheeled the baby inside, Michael couldn't stop thinking about the tiny face he'd seen in his flashlight beam. Someone's daughter, abandoned and alone in the cold night. The next day, Michael couldn't get the image of the abandoned baby out of his mind. During his break, he stopped by the pediatric unit to check on the infant. "How's she doing?" he asked Dr. Chin. "Physically, she's fine. Healthy, good weight, no signs of abuse or neglect. Emotionally," Dr. Chin shrugged. "Too early to tell what kind of impact this will have. What happens now? Child services will try to locate the mother first. If they can't, or if the mother relinquishes her rights, the baby will go into foster care." Michael's stomach clenched. He knew what the foster system was like. Some families were wonderful, but others, he'd seen too many kids bounce from home to home, never finding the stability and love they needed. "The mother, Maria Rodriguez, she's only 17, Dr. Chin continued. "This was her first pregnancy. According to our records, she has no family support and the father isn't in the picture. A 17-year-old girl, scared and alone." Michael tried to imagine what desperation would drive someone to leave their baby at a hospital entrance. That night, as he made his rounds, Michael found himself paying extra attention to the area where he'd found baby Rodriguez. He'd installed a small sign, "Safe Haven, if you need help with a baby, please come inside. We're here to help." It was his own initiative, not something the hospital had asked him to do. But he couldn't bear the thought of another baby being left alone in the cold. 2 weeks later, Michael was just beginning his shift when he noticed a young woman standing near the main entrance. She was Hispanic, very thin, wearing clothes that looked too big for her. She kept looking toward the building, then walking away, then coming back. Something about her behavior reminded Michael of Jake when he was nervous about something, the indecisive pacing, the way she wrapped her arms around herself. Michael approached her carefully, not wanting to frighten her. "Excuse me, miss. Are you looking for someone? I work here. Maybe I can help you find who you're looking for." The girl looked up at him with wide, frightened eyes. She couldn't be more than 17 or 18 and she looked exhausted. I don't know," she said in accented English. I think I made a mistake." Something clicked in Michael's mind. "Are you Maria? Maria Rodriguez?" The girl's eyes filled with tears and she nodded. "I left my baby here," she whispered. 2 weeks ago. I was scared and I didn't know what to do and I thought she would be better off without me." Michael's heart went out to her. "Would you like to see her? She's doing well. The doctors and nurses have been taking good care of her." "Can I? I don't have any money and I don't have anywhere to live, and I don't know how to be a mother." "Let's go inside," Michael said gently. "Let's take this one step at a time." He called Dr. Chin, who came down to meet them immediately. When Maria saw her baby again, healthy and clean in the hospital nursery, she broke down completely. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry I left you. I was just so scared." Over the next hour, Michael and Dr. Chen learned Maria's story. She'd been living with an abusive boyfriend who kicked her out when she told him she was pregnant. Her own family had disowned her for getting pregnant outside of marriage. She'd been sleeping in shelters and on the streets, barely eating enough to keep herself and the baby healthy. "After she was born, I realized I couldn't take care of her," Maria explained through her tears. "I had no money, no home, no way to keep her safe. I thought if I left her somewhere people would find her and take care of her properly." "You did the right thing bringing her to the hospital," Dr. Chin assured her. "But Maria, there are programs that can help you. Housing assistance, job training, childcare support. You don't have to do this alone." "Really?" Maria looked up with the first spark of hope Michael had seen in her eyes. "Really," Michael said. "But it's going to take work. And commitment. Are you willing to do whatever it takes to get your life together for your daughter?" Maria nodded emphatically. "Yes. I want to be her mother. I want to take care of her. I just don't know how." Dr. Chin and Michael spent the rest of the night connecting Maria with social services, helping her apply for emergency housing assistance, and enrolling her in parenting classes. It would be several weeks before she'd be able to take the baby home, but it was a start. A month later, Maria was making real progress. She'd found a small apartment through a program for young mothers, gotten a part-time job at a local grocery store, and was faithfully attending parenting classes. The baby, whom she'd named Isabella, was thriving under her care. Michael had taken a personal interest in their success, checking on them regularly and even helping Maria move into her new apartment on his day off. "You saved us," Maria told him as they unpacked boxes in her small living room. "If you hadn't found Isabella that night, if you hadn't helped me figure out how to get help, I don't know what would have happened to us." "You saved yourselves," Michael replied. "I just pointed you in the right direction." It was a Tuesday night in late November when everything went wrong. Michael was doing his regular patrol around 1 a.m. when he saw a man lurking near the main entrance. The guy was big, heavily muscled, with tattoos covering his arms. He kept looking around nervously, checking his phone and pacing. Something about his behavior set off alarm bells in Michael's head. This wasn't someone visiting a patient or seeking help. This was someone up to no good. Michael was about to approach the man when he saw Maria walking toward the entrance, carrying Isabella in a car seat. She was coming back from her night shift at the grocery store and had stopped by the hospital to pick up some medication for Isabella. The big man saw her too, and his demeanor changed completely. His face darkened with anger, and he started walking toward her with purpose. "Maria," the man shouted. "I've been looking for you." Maria turned toward the voice, and her face went white with terror. She clutched Isabella's car seat closer to her chest. "Carlos," she whispered. "How did you find me? Did you think you could just disappear?" Carlos snarled, getting closer. "Did you think you could just take my kid and hide from me?" "She's not your kid," Maria said, backing toward the hospital entrance. "You said you never wanted her. You threw me out." "Yeah, well, I changed my mind. A man's got rights to his kid." Michael could see that Carlos was drunk or high, probably both. His movements were aggressive, unpredictable. Maria was terrified and Isabella had started crying. Michael keyed his radio to call for backup, but he was too far away to get help before Carlos reached Maria and the baby. "Please, Carlos," Maria pleaded, continuing to back toward the hospital doors. "Just leave us alone. You don't want us. You said so yourself. Don't tell me what I want." Carlos shouted, lunging forward and grabbing Maria's arm roughly. "You embarrassed me running off like that, making me look like some deadbeat dad. You are a deadbeat dad." Maria shot back, then immediately regretted her words. Carlos's face twisted with rage. He raised his hand to strike her, but suddenly Michael was there. "Let go of her," Michael said firmly, stepping between Carlos and Maria. "Right now." Carlos turned his attention to Michael, sizing him up. Michael was tall but lean, clearly no match for Carlos's bulk and muscle. "Who the hell are you?" Carlos snarled. "Hospital security," Michael replied, showing his badge. "This is hospital property and I'm asking you to leave. Now. This is between me and my baby mama," Carlos said. "Walk away, security guard, before you get hurt." "I can't do that," Michael said calmly. "The lady and the baby are under my protection now." Behind him, Maria was fumbling with her phone, trying to call 911 while keeping Isabella's car seat steady. Carlos laughed, a sound with no humor in it. "Your protection? Look at you, skinny boy. What are you gonna do, arrest me with your little flashlight?" "I'm going to ask you one more time to leave peacefully," Michael said. "Police are already on the way. You can walk away now or you can wait for them to arrive." "Screw that," Carlos said, and suddenly he had a knife in his hand. Everything slowed down in that moment. Michael saw the knife glinting in the parking lot lights. He heard Isabella crying. He could sense Maria's terror behind him. He thought about his promise to Jake, "Daddy will never leave you." He thought about Maria and Isabella who'd already been through so much. He thought about his own father who'd walked out when Michael was 8 years old, leaving him and his mother to fend for themselves. Some men run when things get difficult. Some men abandon the people who need them most. Michael Thompson was not that kind of man. "Last chance, security boy," Carlos said, waving the knife. "Walk away or I'll cut you up and then deal with my family." "They're not your family anymore," Michael said quietly. "And you're not getting past me to hurt them." Carlos rushed forward with the knife raised. Michael didn't have any weapons except his flashlight and radio, but he did have something more powerful, the absolute certainty that he would not let this man hurt a mother and baby. Michael dodged to the side as Carlos swung the knife, then tackled him around the waist, driving both of them to the ground. The knife skittered across the pavement, but Carlos was bigger and stronger. "You should have minded your own business." Carlos grunted, throwing a punch that caught Michael in the ribs. Michael absorbed the hit and kept fighting. He could hear sirens in the distance, backup was coming but not soon enough. Carlos managed to get on top of Michael, wrapping his hands around the security guard's throat. "I'm gonna kill you, then I'm gonna take my kid and my woman." "No," Michael gasped, struggling to breathe. "You're not." Michael managed to knee Carlos in the stomach, breaking free from the chokehold. Both men scrambled to their feet, breathing hard. Carlos retrieved his knife and advanced on Michael again, but now he was also looking past him toward Maria and Isabella. "You know what?" Carlos said, his voice cold and calculating. "Maybe I'll just go around you. Deal with them first, then come back for you." He started to move toward Maria, and Michael knew he had only seconds to act. Without hesitation, Michael threw himself directly into Carlos's path. The knife caught him in the shoulder, then again in the side, but he kept moving forward, wrestling with Carlos to keep him away from Maria and the baby. "Run!" Michael shouted to Maria. "Get inside. Lock the doors." Maria hesitated for a split second, torn between fleeing and helping Michael. "Go!" Michael yelled again just as Carlos's knife found its mark again, this time in Michael's chest. Maria ran for the hospital entrance, Isabella's car seat bouncing as she moved. She burst through the doors just as the first police car arrived in the parking lot. Outside, Michael was losing the fight. He'd been stabbed 3 times and blood was flowing freely from his wounds. But every second he kept fighting was another second that Maria and Isabella stayed safe. Carlos, realizing that the police had arrived, tried to run. But his fight with Michael had left him winded and disoriented. The officers caught up with him before he reached the parking lot exit. As they handcuffed Carlos, one of the officers knelt beside Michael, who was lying on the pavement, his breathing shallow and labored. "Ambulance is on the way," the officer said. "Just hang in there, buddy." "The baby," Michael whispered. Is the baby okay? Baby's fine. You saved them, man. You're a hero. Michael closed his eyes, thinking about Jake. His little boy would be waking up in a few hours, expecting his daddy to come home from work. Cross my heart, he promised. Always. The trauma team at Sacred Heart Hospital worked frantically to save Michael's life. Dr. James Morrison, the head of emergency surgery, led the operation to repair the damage from Carlos's knife. He's lost a lot of blood, Dr. Morrison told his team as they worked. The wound to his chest just missed his heart by inches. He's incredibly lucky. Is he going to make it? Asked Dr. Chin, who'd rushed down from the pediatric ward when she heard what happened. It's touch and go, Dr. Morrison replied grimly. The next few hours will be critical. In the waiting room, Maria sat holding Isabella, tears streaming down her face. She blamed herself for what happened to Michael. If she hadn't gotten involved with Carlos, if she hadn't brought her problems to the hospital, none of this would have happened. Mrs. Henderson arrived with Jake shortly after dawn. The elderly woman had heard about the incident on the morning news and knew that Jake needed to be there. Where's my daddy? Jake asked, looking around the busy hospital with wide, frightened eyes. He's with the doctors, sweetheart, Mrs. Henderson said gently. He got hurt helping someone and the doctors are taking care of him. Jake spotted Maria sitting across the waiting room with her baby. Something about her sadness drew him over. Are you crying because my daddy is hurt? He asked innocently. Maria looked down at this small boy with his father's kind eyes. Yes, she whispered. Your daddy saved me and my baby. He's a hero. I know, Jake said seriously. My daddy always keeps his promises. He promised he would always come back to me. Maria's heart broke all over again. What if Michael didn't make it? What if this little boy lost his father because of her? Michael remained in critical condition for 3 days. Jake refused to leave the hospital, camping out in the waiting room with Mrs. Henderson during the day and Emma and Tom, who'd driven over from Miller's Creek when they heard the news, taking shifts at night. The entire hospital staff rallied around Jake and the story of Michael's heroism. Nurses brought him coloring books and snacks. Doctors stopped by to ruffle his hair and assure him that they were taking good care of his daddy. Maria visited every day, bringing Isabella to sit with Jake in the waiting room. The 4-year-old was fascinated by the baby and appointed himself her protector. I'm gonna watch out for her like my daddy watched out for you, he told Maria seriously. Your daddy is very brave, Maria replied. I know. He promised he'd always come back to me. Daddy doesn't break promises. On the 4th day, Dr. Morrison finally had good news. He's going to make it, he announced to the crowded waiting room. He's awake and asking for his son. Jake jumped up from his chair. Can I see him now? I've been waiting forever. Dr. Morrison smiled. Let's go see your daddy. Michael looked pale and weak, connected to various monitors and tubes, but his eyes lit up when he saw Jake running toward his hospital bed. Daddy? Jake climbed carefully onto the bed, mindful of all the wires. You came back. You kept your promise. Of course I did, buddy, Michael whispered, his voice hoarse but strong. Cross my heart, remember? Cross my heart too, Jake said, making an X over his chest. Michael looked around the room and saw Maria standing in the doorway with Isabella. Their eyes met and she mouthed thank you to him. How's the baby? Michael asked. She's perfect, Maria replied, stepping closer to the bed. Thanks to you. What happened to Carlos? He's in jail, Dr. Chin said, joining them. Attempted murder, assault, weapons charges. He won't be bothering you or Maria for a very long time. Michael nodded, satisfied. Good. Over the next few days as Michael recovered, the story of his heroism spread throughout the city. Local news stations picked up the story of the security guard who risked his life to protect a young mother and baby from her violent ex-boyfriend. But Michael didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a father who'd almost broken the most important promise he'd ever made. What happened next surprised everyone, especially Michael. The story of his sacrifice had touched people throughout the community. Donations started pouring in money for his medical bills, gift cards for food and clothing, even offers of better job opportunities. A local construction company offered Michael a supervisory position with better pay and day shift hours. A real estate agent found him a beautiful 2-bedroom apartment in a safe neighborhood and convinced the landlord to waive the security deposit. I don't understand, Michael said to Dr. Chin as she showed him newspaper clippings about his story. All I did was what anyone would have done. That's where you're wrong, Dr. Chin replied. Most people would have called for backup and waited. You put yourself between a dangerous man and innocent people without hesitation. That's not what anyone would do. That's what a hero does. Maria had her own news to share. The publicity around the incident had connected her with a nonprofit organization that helped young mothers. They'd offered her a full scholarship to nursing school and guaranteed childcare for Isabella. "I want to help other people the way you helped me," she told Michael. "I want to be a nurse so I can take care of families who need it." "That's a wonderful dream," Michael said. "It's not a dream anymore," Maria replied. "Thanks to you, it's going to be real." 6 months later, Michael was fully recovered and settled into his new life. The construction job was challenging but rewarding, and he loved being able to spend evenings with Jake instead of sleeping during the day. Their new apartment was in a complex with a playground and a pool. Jake had made friends with other children in the building and was thriving in his new preschool. "Daddy, look." Jake called out from the monkey bars at the playground. "I can go all the way across." "I see that, buddy. You're getting so strong." Michael watched his son play, thinking about how much their lives had changed. The financial stress was gone, thanks to his better job and the community support they'd received. Jake was happy and secure, surrounded by friends and opportunities. But the best part was that they were together, healthy and safe. Maria stopped by regularly with Isabella, who was now a chubby, happy 8-month-old. Maria was excelling in her nursing classes and had moved into her own small house through a program for single mothers. "She's getting so big," Michael said, holding Isabella while Maria and Jake played on the swings. "She is. And she's going to grow up knowing about the man who saved her life," Maria replied. "I'm going to make sure she understands what real courage looks like." Carlos had been sentenced to 15 years in prison for the attack. He'd also been ordered to stay away from Maria and Isabella permanently. Maria never had to worry about him again. A year after the incident, the city decided to honor Michael with a medal for civilian heroism. The ceremony was held at City Hall, with Mayor Patricia Williams presenting the award. "Michael Thompson represents the very best of our community," Mayor Williams said to the gathered crowd. When faced with danger, he chose to protect others rather than protect himself. His courage saved 2 innocent lives and reminds us all what it means to be a true neighbor. Jake sat in the front row wearing his best shirt and tie, beaming with pride as his father received the medal. Maria was there too, with Isabella on her lap, both of them applauding enthusiastically. "I want to say something," Michael said when invited to speak. He looked out at the crowd, then down at Jake's proud face. "A year ago, I was just a guy trying to make ends meet and raise my son the best I could. I never expected to be called a hero. But I learned something that night at the hospital. We all have a choice when we see someone in trouble. We can walk away or we can step up. We can think about our own safety or we can think about protecting people who can't protect themselves." He paused, his voice becoming emotional. "My son Jake is the reason I get up every morning. He's the reason I work hard, the reason I keep going when things get difficult." That night, when I saw Maria and baby Isabella in danger, I thought about what kind of man I wanted to be for Jake. I wanted to be the kind of father who stands up for what's right, even when it's scary. Michael looked directly at his son. "Jake, I hope someday when you're grown up and you see someone who needs help, you'll remember this day. You'll remember that real strength isn't about being the biggest or the toughest. Real strength is about protecting people who need protection." The crowd gave Michael a standing ovation, but all he cared about was the proud smile on his son's face. 2 years later, Michael had been promoted to project manager at his construction company. He and Jake had moved into a small house with a backyard where Jake could play with his dog, a golden retriever puppy they'd named Courage. Maria had graduated from nursing school at the top of her class and was working in the pediatric unit at Sacred Heart Hospital. Isabella was a happy, energetic 2-year-old who called Michael Uncle Mike. But Michael's proudest accomplishment was the mentoring program he'd started for single fathers in the community. Every Saturday morning he met with a group of men who were struggling to balance work and parenting, offering advice and support. "The hardest part about being a single dad," he told the group, "isn't the money or the exhaustion or the responsibility. It's feeling like you're alone in it. But you're not alone. We're all in this together." One Saturday, a young man named David joined the group. He was 24 years old with a 3-year-old daughter, recently abandoned by his girlfriend. "I don't know if I can do this," David admitted. "I work nights, I can barely pay rent, and I have no idea how to braid hair or help with potty training." The other men in the group laughed sympathetically. They'd all been there. "Let me tell you something," Michael said. "Your daughter doesn't need you to be perfect. She just needs you to be there. To keep your promises. To show up even when it's hard. What if I mess up? What if I can't give her everything she needs?" Michael thought about his own journey, the struggles, the fears, the night he almost died protecting strangers who became family. You will mess up, he said honestly. We all do. But love covers a lot of mistakes. And if you love her enough to fight for her, to sacrifice for her, to be the man she needs you to be, that's what matters. On Jake's 7th birthday, Michael threw a big party in their backyard. The guest list included all their new friends from the apartment complex: Maria and Isabella, Mrs. Henderson, Emma and Tom from Miller's Creek, Dr. Chin from the hospital, and all the families from the Single Fathers support group. As Michael watched Jake blow out his candles, surrounded by people who loved him, he thought about how much their lives had changed since that night at the hospital. He'd learned that heroism isn't about being fearless. It's about being afraid and doing the right thing anyway. It's about keeping promises, even when keeping them costs you everything. He'd learned that community isn't just about the place where you live. It's about the people who show up when you need them, who celebrate your victories and support you through your struggles. Most importantly, he'd learned that love multiplies when you give it away. By protecting Maria and Isabella, he hadn't lost anything. He'd gained a bigger family, a deeper purpose, and the knowledge that he was raising his son to be a good man. Make a wish, buddy. Michael called out as Jake prepared to blow out his candles. Jake closed his eyes tight, made his wish, and blew out all 7 candles in one breath. What did you wish for? Isabella asked, clapping her tiny hands. Jake looked at his father and smiled. I wish that my daddy would always keep his promises. Michael knelt down and hugged his son tight. Cross my heart, buddy. Cross my heart too, Daddy. Later that evening, after all the guests had gone home and Jake was asleep in his bed, Michael sat on his back porch looking up at the stars. His phone buzzed with a text message from Maria. Isabella's first words today were, Uncle Mike. Thank you for giving us a life where she can grow up safe and loved. You saved us in more ways than one. Michael smiled, typing back, You saved yourselves. I just helped you find the door. But he knew it was more than that. That night at the hospital had changed all of them. It had shown them that ordinary people could do extraordinary things when love demanded it. 10 years later, Michael stood at the same spot outside Sacred Heart Hospital where he'd found baby Isabella crying in the cold. But now he wasn't alone. Jake, now 14 years old and almost as tall as his father, stood beside him. Isabella, 12 years old with her mother's dark eyes and Michael's determined spirit, held a bouquet of flowers. They were attending the dedication of the Michael Thompson Safe Haven Memorial Garden, a beautiful space the hospital had created to honor his sacrifice and provide a safe, warm place for anyone who needed to surrender a baby. Maria, now the head nurse in the pediatric unit, spoke to the gathered crowd of hospital staff, city officials and community members. 10 years ago, a security guard named Michael Thompson made a choice, she said. When he saw a mother and baby in danger, he chose to protect us instead of protecting himself. His courage didn't just save our lives that night, it changed the trajectory of our entire future. She gestured toward Isabella, who was now taller than Maria and planning to attend medical school to become a pediatrician. Isabella will never remember that night, but she's grown up knowing she was worth fighting for. She's learned that real heroes don't wear capes, they carry flashlights and make minimum wage and show up when people need them most. Dr. Chin, now the hospital's chief administrator, took the podium next. In the decade since Michael's heroic act, this hospital has implemented new safety protocols, expanded our social services for new mothers, and created support programs for single parents. We've helped hundreds of families stay together safely. That's Michael's legacy, not just the lives he saved that night, but all the lives that have been touched by his example. When it was Michael's turn to speak, he looked out at the crowd and saw so many faces that represented their extended family. Mrs. Henderson, now 82 but still sharp as a tack. David, the young single father who joined his support group and was now running his own construction business. Dozens of other fathers and families who'd found strength and community through the programs that grew out of that terrible, wonderful night. I used to think heroism was something special, Michael said. Something that only certain people could do. But I've learned that we're all capable of heroism. Every single parent working 2 jobs to provide for their children is a hero. Every person who helps a neighbor in need is a hero. Every child who stands up to a bully to protect someone smaller is a hero. He looked at Jake and Isabella, standing together like the siblings they'd become. These 2 kids have taught me that heroism isn't about the moment you risk everything. It's about what you do with the life you've been given after that moment passes. Jake has volunteered at the Children's Hospital every summer since he was 10. Isabella tutors younger kids and raises money for homeless families. They're both heroes and they don't even know it yet. Michael's voice grew emotional as he concluded. That night 10 years ago I thought I might die. I thought I might break the most important promise I'd ever made to my son. But what I learned is that some promises are bigger than just the words we speak. The promise to protect, to serve, to show up when people need you, that promise lives on in everyone whose life you touch. As the memorial garden was officially unveiled, Michael watched Jake and Isabella place flowers at the base of the commemorative plaque. The inscription read, "In honor of Michael Thompson and all who choose courage over comfort, love over fear and service over self. May their example inspire us to be heroes in our own small ways." That evening, as the Thompson family walked home through their neighborhood, Jake asked his father a question that had been on his mind. "Dad, do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't been working that night? If someone else had found Isabella?" Michael thought about it. "I think someone else would have helped her," he said finally. "Maybe not the same way, but someone would have stepped up. There are a lot of good people in this world, Jake. More than you might think. But what if there wasn't anyone else there? Then God would have put someone else there," Michael replied. "I believe that when people really need help, help finds a way to show up." Isabella, who'd been quiet during the walk, suddenly spoke up. "I want to be a doctor so I can help people the way everyone helped us." "That's a wonderful dream," Michael said. "It's not just a dream," Isabella replied, echoing her mother's words from years ago. "It's going to be real." As they reached their house, Michael looked at these two young people who'd become the center of his world. Jake, strong and compassionate, already showing signs of the man he'd become. Isabella, brilliant and determined, carrying within her the potential to heal and help countless others. "You know what?" Michael said, putting his arms around both of them. "I think the world is going to be just fine with you two in it." Later that night, after Jake had finished his homework and Isabella had gone home with Maria, Michael sat in his living room reading a letter that had arrived that morning. It was from a woman in another state who'd heard about the memorial garden dedication. "Dear Mr. Thompson," the letter read, "I saw the news story about your memorial garden and I had to write to you. 3 years ago, my teenage daughter found herself pregnant and scared. She was going to have an abortion, but then she heard your story. She heard about how you fought to protect a baby who wasn't even yours, and she decided that if that baby was worth fighting for, then maybe her baby was too. My granddaughter Emma is now 2 years old, healthy and happy, surrounded by a family who loves her. My daughter finished high school, started college, and is studying to be a social worker. She wants to help other young mothers the way people helped Maria. You will probably never meet my granddaughter, but you saved her life just as surely as you saved Isabella's. Your courage that night has rippled out in ways you'll never know. Thank you for being the kind of man who keeps his promises, even when it cost him everything. Sincerely, Margaret Chin, no relation to Dr. Chin, but a mother whose family was saved by your example." Michael folded the letter carefully and placed it in the box where he kept all the letters and cards they'd received over the years. Hundreds of them, from people whose lives had been touched in some way by that night at the hospital. He thought about the promise he'd made to Jake all those years ago, "Daddy will always come back to you." He'd kept that promise, but it had grown into something bigger. It had become a promise to show up for anyone who needed protection, to be the kind of man his son could be proud of, to use his life in service of others. As he turned off the lights and headed to bed, Michael smiled. Tomorrow he'd wake up, make Jake breakfast, drive him to school, go to work managing construction projects that built homes for families, come home to help with homework, and tuck his son into bed with the same promise he'd been making for years. "Cross my heart, buddy. Cross my heart too, Dad." Some promises are simple. Some promises change everything. And some promises, when kept with love and courage, echo through generations, creating ripples of hope that reach farther than we could ever imagine. The security guard who became a hero. The abandoned baby who grew up to heal others. The single father who learned that community is built one act of courage at a time. Their story continues in every person who chooses to protect rather than walk away, to love rather than fear, to show up rather than disappear. The CCTV footage from that night captured Michael's heroic actions, but it couldn't capture the love that motivated them. It showed a man risking his life for strangers, but it couldn't show the promises that gave him strength, the community that supported him, or the legacy that would grow from his sacrifice. In the end, that's what real heroism looks like. Not the dramatic moment caught on camera, but the quiet daily choice to be someone others can count on. To keep your promises. To cross your heart and mean it. To love so deeply that you'll face any danger to protect the people who matter to you. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, to discover that when you give everything away to protect others, You don't lose yourself. You find out who you really are.